going to start us off?
And you can put that first slide up while I start talking. So it's really good to see all of you. I'm Margaret Perrow. I'm from Southern Oregon University. I teach English and I direct the Oregon Writing Project at SOU. And I want to thank Young Hee and the whole committee for accepting this roundtable into the program. It's very exciting to be here today with my colleague and friend, Jay Schroder, who's going to present the bulk of this topic. Jay teaches at Central Medford High School here in Oregon, which is our alternative high school in Medford. And we're really excited to share what we believe is one of the opportunities for hope, as people were saying last night in the opening session, an example of the power of what Tobin Hart put it so well when he said, the little and the local. That's what we're going to share with you today, is an example of the little and the local and how powerful that can be. But we hope to get you excited about this Teacher Institute that we have currently underway and share some preliminary findings, and then open it up for some discussion about leadership in holistic education, which was a conversation that John King and Kim Harbin started really well, I thought, yesterday afternoon. So just a really quick introduction to the Oregon Writing Project. At SOU, we are a professional development organization for teachers. We're one of about 200 around the country, sites around the country at universities, and we usually focus on supporting educators as teachers, as writers, and as leaders. Jay Schroder is a teacher consultant for the Oregon Writing Project, and he recently wrote a book manuscript that he's in the process of working to get published called Teach from Your Best Self. And when I saw this manuscript and thought about it, I thought this would be a great institute for teachers, and Jay kindly agreed to give it a shot. And so that manuscript is, and Jay's work is the inspiration behind the institute that we currently have running, called Teach from Your Best Self. Rather than focusing on writing instruction in this institute, we're focused on using expressive writing, drawing on the work of James Pennebaker, expressive writing, to support teachers holistically. So here's the sort of nuts and bolts. In spring of 21, just recently, we got a grant, which was some state funding through the Education Service District here in Southern Oregon. On the left, you can see the part of the flyer that we use to recruit teachers. We got 17 teachers ultimately to register for the Institute, middle and high school teachers from a wide range of experience and different content areas. This is an intensive institute. We had 60 hours total. We had a summer in-person intensive this past June, which was a week long. And now we're meeting monthly on Saturdays through the academic year. The teachers do receive stipends for participating in the Institute, and they also have the option to earn low-cost graduate credits for a class that we called holistic teaching. So that's a little bit of the nuts and bolts, and we'll share some of the very preliminary results with you in a little bit after Jay's had a chance to talk to you about what we're actually doing in the Institute. You can switch it, Jay, it's you.
Yeah, I know it's not switching. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so basically, I started this design with an awareness of the extent to which teachers are actually struggling. And the whole profession is kind of in a crisis right now. There's a lot of teachers leaving, and there's an inadequate number of new teachers to replace them. Meanwhile, we're living in a culture which seems to be increasingly tipping hard toward dysfunction, which makes it harder for us to collectivize to solve the challenges that we're facing as a society and as a planet. So as the challenges grow, because we're not solving them, the dysfunction actually seems to increase. And it just seems to me that the number one counterbalance that we have to this is education, that we can actually educate a new generation of people to be able to meet these challenges, but only if the education system gets its self figured out. Currently, teacher education programs aren't fully equipping teachers with what they need for the reality of the job. And part of the problem is that there's a lot of kids that come into our classrooms that aren't really interested in what we have to teach them. And so there's this whole other level of training that has to happen to train teachers to be able to meet students at a place of actually being resistant to learning, instead of just assuming that they're going to be open to anything that we have to teach them. So we offered this institute, and the secret sauce kind of the institute is that it puts the emphasis on who the version of the teacher that comes into the classroom. So we call this the Teach from Your Best Self. And what we're talking about is expanding teachers' capacities to bring their most open, most available, and most genuine selves to the classroom. And we know that the stress of the job actually undermines teachers' ability to do that. And so how can we equip teachers to bring their best selves even when they're under the fire of a lot of stress? The current system of teaching and learning often happens inside of a stress reaction. So because the job is so overwhelming, teachers are tipped into a limbic system response, which actually has them have this neocortex be less available so that they don't have their whole brain to teach from. Meanwhile, it's become stressful for students, especially if the teacher is using a lot of control and regimentation in order to teach them. Students go into a stress response as well. And so the learning gets shut down pretty early in the process if teachers aren't bringing their whole best selves to the classroom. If they are, then they can actually find ways to soothe and to bring out the best selves in the students. This is actually the model for Teach from Your Best Self. You see at the top of this pyramid, if the teacher is teaching from their best self, it actually works together with the students being at their best self. So if I just focus on being at my best self, I'm going to cue the students in my classroom to come to the lessons from their best self. Likewise, the learning environment is going to be better. But if I focus on the learning environment, that's going to bring up the best in me. It's also going to bring out the best in my students. Then if I engage with students in a way that calls their best selves forward, that's going to help me be in my best self, and it's going to also support the learning environment. So in this institute, the structure, we start and end every single session with a circle. And this establishes safety, it establishes acceptance and belonging, and it gives teachers a chance to share what their experience is, which is actually pretty rare. And it's actually become one of the cornerstones of the process, and the participants absolutely love it. We also have taken some time to set up and name what I'm calling the elephants in the room. And one of the main elephants in the room of public education that we don't talk about a lot is that the students actually aren't often interested in what we have to teach them. And that makes the job super hard. I mean, anybody that's tried to teach somebody something and the person that they're teaching doesn't care about learning it, it's practically impossible. And so how to work with those situations becomes super important. We help teachers identify and focus on what matters. And this is important because of the overwhelm of the job. There's so many things to focus on. And if teachers are trying to do everything, they end up just burning out and wearing down. And the stuff that actually matters often doesn't get addressed. And then we also model approaches for those real hot moments, those stressful moments in the classroom. So maybe a kid blows up. Like, how does a teacher stay in their best self during those kind of moments? How can, when a teacher actually gets triggered, either through a trauma response or from a stress reaction response, what can a teacher do to quickly return to their best self so that they can go back to teaching from there? Or what can they do to de-escalate themselves so that they can stay in their best zone for working with the kids? And we also offer approaches to teachers to create a more durable, less fragile best self. And this is where we lean on the expressive writing, the research pioneered by James Pennebaker. One of the things we realize is that everybody carries around some load of trauma from their past. And the ACEs study has showed that these adverse childhood experiences impact our ability to function. And so helping teachers get in touch with this past trauma through some writing processes that actually help them reframe those, actually helps them go forward so they're less likely to get knocked off of their best self when they're triggered by a trauma in the classroom. So one of the things we're learning is that teachers need that same sense of safety and belonging that we're asking them to create for their students. And so we establish that in the circles, and it really matters quite a bit. Also, the expressive writing is working. The feedback that we're getting from our participants is that the expressive writing process is allowing them to go into situations that would have formerly triggered them and kind of re-traumatize them. And they're able to go in with their whole selves and maintain their best self and engage in more productive ways.
So then those are some things that we suspected, and those are some things that have been confirmed through this process. We're still in the early stages though, because the school year has just started, right? So some things are emerging, and I'll just talk about those briefly. The first thing for me is the participating and watching this institute has really challenged and extended my understanding of what the word holistic means. Last night's opening panel, there were people who reminded us of the many definitions, right, and instantiations of what holistic education can look like. And even the title of this conference, Holistic Teaching and Learning, links together the teaching and the learning in the definition, which I really appreciate. I think that often holistic refers to how we nurture our students and how we ask them to connect with their own emotions, or maybe to connect with the natural environment. Sometimes also, and increasingly, I think, holistic refers to teacher self-care. And that can sometimes even be reflective writing, right? But what's exciting to us about this institute is how it brings those two realms together, the inner world of teachers' inner work and the outer world of the classroom and the environment that they go into every day. So that's, for me, been really pushing the definition and understanding of holistic and what's in that big circle. Last night, Jack Miller said, teachers need to be rooted in their own songs in order to allow others to sing. I think that's a really lovely way to say what we're experiencing and seeing that's emerging in this institute. So that's the first thing. We're seeing evidence that the institute is helping teachers connect to their own best selves in order to support their students. In other words, make that active connection in their practice. We're seeing evidence that this is really readily applicable, from comments in the circle, from stories about people's teaching and personal life. It is quite amazing how quickly and easily people are able to use what they've been learning in the Institute and then come back and talk about it. We are learning that there's even a bigger hunger and need for this kind of work than we anticipated. We knew it was important, but we didn't anticipate how important it was for people who are coming to these workshops. And in fact, we've been talking about, well, we have half-day Saturdays set up through the year. We really needed full-day Saturdays to give everybody adequate time. So just amazing how much of a hunger there is for this. And then finally, I think there's one more there. We've been learning that teachers not only want to do the work themselves, but the teachers in this institute actually want to support the work and find ways to extend it outward. And that was something that really surprised and delighted us as well. So the next slide has some quotes from teachers. Now, again, we're in the beginning of the school year, so we don't really have quotes that talk about the actual what's happening in the classroom, but we expect that by the end of the year we will, because we are collecting data in an ongoing way from teachers and in writing from what's happening. So the first quote, I think it's incredibly easy to feel burnt out when it comes to professional development. Most of it feels useless or a waste of time. That's unfortunately a lot of people's reality. This institute, however, is not a strategy, but a mindset and a framework that can be applicable to any situation in or out of the classroom. That's really important, that we didn't start with teaching strategies. We are using Zaretta Hammond's book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, but we didn't start there, and we didn't start with students, and we didn't start with teaching strategies. We started with the Pennebaker and the expressive writing and the getting to the heart of the heart and soul of who the teacher is internally, right? So that's what I think what this quote is reflecting. I could never have foreseen the beautiful paradigm shifting nature of this institute. And that's something obviously that takes time as well, shifting paradigms, right? It doesn't happen just by an intellectual understanding. It's an experience and an embodied understanding. I found community, acceptance, and practical advice. And this quote is really about connection with others, connection in the community. That's part of that holistic, the bigger circle of holistic teaching and learning. Next one, Jay. This has been one of the most beautiful, meaningful, validating experiences of my life. These are powerful and big statements, right, that people are making about something that's happening to them in this institute. I've never felt so seen, and that's this validation and the importance of belonging for all of us, seen by any group of human beings, so safe to express doubts and fears. This has been the most helpful professional development course I've ever taken, and it's also the most applicable. I think that's repetitive. There's some repetition in here, and these are all quotes from different individual teachers, but wanted to give you the flavor for the intensity of people's reaction. It's not just about you as a teacher. More importantly, this will be a game changer for your life and all parts of your life. This quote, again, it's about not just wanting to take on the work internally for this teacher themselves, but actually to share with others. The second person, you, kind of suggests that here. And then finally, I've come away with a renewed story about myself. A lot of that comes from the expressive writing and the telling and retelling of stories and framing them in different ways about our past. Now I can live from my best resilient self as well as teach from that space so that my students will benefit from me to the fullest extent possible. So that quote nicely connects that inner realm and the outer realm. It's in the future tense, my students will benefit from me. But as we go through the academic year, we're expecting to collect more data and to understand better what's happening to teachers when they return to the classroom and they're interacting with students from this new place of best selfness.
So ultimately where we want to go is a situation where the whole education system embraces and encourages and cultivates the best selves of teachers, the best selves of students, and creates a learning environment, school cultures to do that. So looking forward, we just have questions for you and we want to answer your questions. We're curious if you have thoughts and ideas. We're just learning how to talk about what we're doing, to extend the work, the best way to carry it forward. How can we grow this burgeoning underground movement toward actually shifting the educational system? Just so you know, I am writing a book. I'm beginning to lead more workshops. We hope to secure funding for another institute next year. And if you have thoughts and ideas about next steps for research and dissemination. And so there is our contact information. You're welcome to write it down and contact either one of us or both of us. We look
Oh,
forward to hearing
mine
from
is
you.
wrong. I'll put mine in the chat because I just noticed another typo there. Sorry, I found my own email.
No worries.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to stop sharing because I think we're running short on time and I want to see all your faces. You have no
There we go.
idea how unnerving and crazy that is to speak to my own presentation. I've never done that before. And it was really nerve-wracking. So love to hear your responses now.
Okay, thank you so much to Margaret and also Jay for the presentation. So when you are speaking about, when you were speaking about that whole institute, right? I was like, oh no, can we have one in Malaysia? Because I'm also teaching, I'm a student, but I'm also teaching at the same time. So I noticed that sometimes at my current institutions, there seems to be like a competition among the lecturers or the teachers to do well and to lead the class well. So usually when we are having meetings and then people will try to share best practices. Like, okay, so if there's one student that I find it very difficult to handle or something, when I share this, instead of like, oh yeah, I hear you or something, people would start to try to teach strategies like, hey, classroom management strategies, how do you handle this? So it worked very well in my class, so why not you try this? So I think that element is missing. So when you mentioned that the first one, I think is like name the elephants in the room. So I think that is something that really wowed me. Like, yes, this is something that I need to bring it back to my team, and I thank you all for that. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Well, thank you, Lei. What I find actually makes a lot of sense. We're all given a lot of strategies as educators, but if I bring a cranky version of myself and try to apply those strategies, or if I'm impatient or frustrated, that same strategy isn't going to work. What matters most of all, that I bring my whole best, genuine, available self to the situation, where I have access to my full neocortex, all of my tools and resources, and then I can relate to the student from their best self and call that forward, instead of trying to use some kind of control technique from probably a stress response, which is where we often go as educators.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you for that comment. Anybody else? We have this time. I really want to hear what your thoughts are and what your ideas are or responses.
So Jay and Margaret, thank you for this opportunity. For me, as one of the teacher educators, that it was like it's surprising to hear that oh, our teachers are not, that were probably more so the pre-service teachers or new beginning teachers are not quite ready to jump in and take on. And that's always true. It takes time and a lot of kind of self-discovery themselves. But also, I'm really grateful to hear that even seasoned teachers are searching for their hearts and minds and their souls. And just to kind of, as they are kind of exploring this new adventure for them to become themselves and be authentic self and coming from their core and connecting with their students from heart to heart. And I believe that they would be mentors for the next generation of teachers who are yet to be there and trying to walk the fine line. There's sometimes eggshells that not to step on and break things, but it was really grateful to hear that this holistic education approach is valued by even English teachers who are thinkers, the thinkers of thinkers, and that they can use this holistic approach themselves and for others, and be the mentors for the new generations.
Wow, thank you, Young-hee. That's a great comment, and I hope that comment doesn't feel like I'm putting down teacher education programs. I think they're very good programs, but when I look at the statistics and I see that even before the pandemic, we had 44% of the teachers leaving the profession within the first 5 years, and that those numbers are getting worse, it says that we're really not setting people up for the reality of the job as a nation. And I think one of the things that we're doing is we're kind of assuming that, well, we'll give them some tips and strategies that will actually work if students want to learn. But then what happens when they're faced with 35 students and half of the, well, 2/3 of them don't care. And some of those are actively trying to cause problems and act out in the classroom. What does that take? And it almost takes we have to recreate a new person in a way to deal with that, the way that the Army creates soldiers. And we have to create teachers. We can't just give a normal person a set of tools and expect them to be able to thrive.
Young-hee, I just want to jump in on that too. Thanks, Jay, for that. And this is definitely not meant as an indictment of teacher education. And Young-hee, I think that certainly in the elementary programs where you work more with the teachers who are going to work with more younger kids, this is maybe more of a sort of normal discourse to have in a sort of normalized way of thinking. So that was one reason actually that we decided to focus on middle school and high school teachers for the initial cohort. One of the things that we did in this institute was we invited an elementary school teacher to join us to kind of participate, but also to observe and to see if she thought that there were ways that this could be useful or adapted in it for elementary teachers. And before I tell you what she said about that, one of the benefits of this is what you said. It's having the experienced veteran teachers in the same room with brand new teachers, and some teachers who had done all of their student teaching virtually, right? And we're coming into a classroom for the first time. The mix was really powerful. I have to say I was a little bit apprehensive of knowing the context that teachers are in and how burnt out some of our veteran teachers are. I was a little worried that might spread and cause some cynicism in newer teachers before they'd even gotten started. It has not turned out that way. The power of the community has overridden all of that. And everybody is benefiting and enjoying interacting with each other. The range of experience has been a real asset, right? So everybody's bringing their whole selves. So to come back to what the elementary teacher said, she's been incredibly positive. She's been an enormous asset in the Institute. And she doesn't feel like there'd be a whole lot of adaptation necessary to take it to elementary grades teachers. So that's a really good thing too. So I just wanted to mention that because I know with your focus on elementary, and I know all of the heart and soul that you put in and to working with teachers whole selves in the elementary preparation, I don't think our secondary students get quite as much as that. And so that was, as I said, why we sort of focused on that level first. But going forward, we'd like to keep it open it up to cross levels.
Oh, definitely. That was not my any aware like defensive comment at all. It was like we're just beginning as we let them fly. They're on their own, with their own wings. That we hope that some teachers will carry them along and kind of surround them with care and nourishment. And that was like what you're doing in the with this project. So it was so refreshing to hear, and how important it is to, for the perhaps elders in teacher education and teachers to really guide along the young new teachers.
That's really helpful. And I think, Jay, that helps get at one of our questions, which is moving the work forward. I mean, one of the things that we're seeing is teachers coming on Saturdays and saying, oh, we wish we could just be here all the time with this group and not, and that's unfortunate. We send them out. And like you say, Young-hee, we want them to land in places where they're connected and they have that support. But how do we, our question really here is, how do we make sure that that happens for everybody, not just for the group that comes back each Saturday and has the opportunity in the summer? We have about 3 minutes, it looks like.
Is there anybody else?
I'm hoping that you can hear me. Can you hear me? Because I've had some internet connectivity issues.
I certainly can.
Okay, so I'm Katie. I'm from Toronto. Nice to, thanks so much for your presentation. I just think that to hear about this institute is just very powerful, because I do a lot of teacher training for teachers who work in a specialized setting with children with significant disabilities. And one of the things that we find is that the burnout rate in those areas is even greater. So this chances to share stories and to talk about how do we build this resilience. And a lot of it, as they're saying, it's finding out how to bring your best self to that class and to be present and to deal with all these things. So it's just really, I'm really interested to hear how the rest of the Institute goes and what comes out of this, because I think there is a gap. There is a gap once you get in. You get that teacher education, you get it, but then when you get in and see more of the challenges, there needs to be some more engagement there. And that sharing in the circle is so valuable. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Katie. And so send us an email and we'll keep you up to date. And anybody that wants to maintain contact as we grow this, we're looking for creating opportunities in other places to experience this work. And so just let us know if you're interested and we will keep you up to date.
Lei, we'd love to have you join us from Malaysia, maybe next summer.
Maybe we can go out there and do something.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. It's just been a great pleasure. Margaret and I didn't know if we should do a roundtable, actually try to instruct, but we wanted your feedback. And so we decided to do it this way. Thanks so much for your attention. I hope this was interesting to you, and enjoy the rest of the conference. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you, everybody. And thanks especially Young-hee